Good morning on this dark and rainy Monday in Albion. The day is ill-omened. I have an intractable and tedious translation which I should have already completed, but I am languishing. It's not a translation, it is a so-called correction of the work of my colleagues in some cases, and unfortunately people who are not really my colleagues in other cases, but rather people who just, think they can write what they want. And I'm not allowed, as a translator, you're not actually allowed to do that. There are certain, you have a responsibility as a translator to the author of the work. I take it quite seriously. I don't always manage to satisfy all the criteria, of course, but that's the function. And it's interesting because, of course, sometimes if you, as you work, if you perceive the thinking of the author, that's really what you need to do. You're no longer translating what he's written. I mean, you are, but you're translating his thought, which is the way translation is most effective, I think. It's a tricky path. It can be a tricky path, but it's very interesting always to consider things from this standpoint, and it can lead to the production of very different documents in the case of advertising, but in particular anything promotional. Of course, you're working with idioms, so you need and imagery, and idiom and imagery are still quite national. They're pushing a broader understanding of these things. Of course, we have so many buzzwords flying around our heads that people continue to use. Sustainability, of course, we can never have enough of it. So nonetheless, although the day is ill-omened, I'll start off with a mention of, I was going to talk about the whole pride idea, actually, and it started from a clip I was watching by the McCoys, and the song is from 1965, and it's called Hang On Snoopy. And the clip, though, I found out later, was recorded in 1975. And it shows a young girl, I think, dancing very freely in the style of dancing that you do when you don't know the steps. And it's that kind of body dancing and body expression, and it's very sexual in nature. It has this quite primitive and organic aspect, really. It's a very fleshly activity, and I don't mean by saying that it's something that should be avoided. Quite the contrary. I mean, I can't see why. We have our flesh nature, and if the need to dance should come upon a man or a woman, I think they should dance and move their whole body, as they used to say in the lyrics. But the So the singers, this group on the stage, so they would have been filmed in 1975, all had very effeminate kind of faces, it seemed to me, or certainly the singer did, and they all had this long hair and these dewy eyes, and they were quite effeminate, I did think. Whereas the dancer was, very slender hipped, with a kind of very boyish appearance, with cropped hair and a peaked cap. And she was really throwing it out there. She wasn't wearing any form of a bra, of course, although she had a t-shirt on. And it was a very sexual image indeed. And the song was saying, "Hang on, Snoopy." And Snoopy lives in a bad part of town, but the singer is in love with her. This is what I got from it. I'm sure there's more to it, but it struck me, of course, that living in a bad part of town is like is a metaphor for living on the wild side, which is a metaphor for being crossed. Mm. The message, you see, the deeper message of a video like that is clearly promoting, if you like, if that's the right word for it, um, switching of genders or gender fluidity, should we call it? I think that's the modern name. And my beliefs in this area actually go far beyond simply, a claim like that, which is quite tame, and I think probably a lot of people would agree with it. I actually think that we have been manipulated, large parts of the population, genetically, to change the male and female sort of nature of our birth, and that many people have been re-engineered in utero to be born of the opposite gender to their chromosomes, as it were, or a different gender. There are various different possibilities that can occur. And the two main ones, for anybody who doesn't know or thinks I'm talking nonsense, are the Free-Martin syndrome, in which a male is actually a biological woman, but has all the male attributes and can produce children, doesn't have breasts or anything like that, but cannot sire male children. That's the classification, if you like, of Free-Martin. And I have wondered, because of my own position, whether I might belong to that category. I'm not a kind of a macho kind of a man. I'm quite feminine in my interests and my incessant talking. So there are aspects of my life and my personality that have made me question whether I might be a Free-Martin. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I mean, I am what I am. But it's interesting to notice that there is this there's this idea which I'm reiterating. It's not my own. I heard it and I've been looking into it, and I don't know exactly, but I think there's support for this. And the other gender is when women are produced via Swyer's syndrome. Again, this can be produced in utero, as far as my understanding goes. And in Swyer's syndrome, the woman is a biological male, but has genitalia, female genitalia, that are external, as it were, more external. The pleasure zones are on the lips of the vagina. Talking about this stuff is a bit embarrassing. I'm not trying to be, salacious. So there's a different presentation of the sexual organs, shall we say? But the woman is, develops breasts and can bear children, male and female, but is effectively a biological male, and will tend to have narrow hips and be quite muscular, perhaps broad-shouldered also, and might have a square kind of more masculine face. These women are often very beautiful by modern standards, shall we say. And I'm not making any claim here because I think this is purely speculation, but for example, Jennifer Aniston's face is extremely attractive, and when you look at it, it is quite angular, you see, and one of the things that you would look for is also a person's eyes, because male eyes in a female face can be extremely beautiful. These things are extremely alluring, you see. This is the path of pleasure. The path of pleasure. If people have no understanding of this and they feel alien to it, then they haven't understood something. Something is missing in their life, I'm sorry to have to say. We have to understand that the sexual realm is vast and variegated, and sexual beauty is a tremendous thing. And historically, you see, the male has been the object of worship, ultimately. Because offering that dual usage, you see, which a woman cannot offer. So when it comes to sexual play, it has always been males. Most prostitutes are men. People don't understand this, but they are. It's very common, and men want male prostitutes, of course, especially if they're beautiful. These are the deeper, darker desires, shall we say, that people try to escape from. But that's where it's heading ultimately. And so I suppose the question is really, or a valid question would be, so if this process has been deliberately engineered, as it were, even if you don't believe the genetic manipulation, because I understand that that's something that people would struggle with, and I certainly don't claim to know. I have followed the transvestigation work done by Mr. E, and if anybody's interested, I would look him up on probably Telegram. Mr. E. It can be written MRE capital or in various ways. I can't remember what his name is. He did some great videos on explaining the difference, the anatomical differences between men and women, and showing how certain bodies were just male and other bodies were female, but mainly exposing men presenting as women you see. So the question then arises, if this were true, and of course people might form different conclusions, but the question then arises, is the person aware, or has this been engineered in utero and not really taken into account? Or do all these people know? Are they all in on the deception, as it were, and presumably practicing it in their own lives also, and giving their children to it because their God really would demand this kind of a thing? We do have to pay attention to what Satanism proposes. And, the question is that a good way to go or not, I suppose, ultimately? One has to choose. I mean, some people would see that as being freeing. They would say, well, people have these urges and they should be free to express them, and so it's good that they're being given greater freedom to express the urges that they have. And that is an argument, of course. But I don't think the alternative argument could possibly be to prevent people from expressing their feelings in any way that they choose. However, there are other ways of looking at life, aren't there? And I think it's fair to give them a voice also, so that people can choose to some extent the path that they wish to follow, because there are two paths, and the path of gender fluidity is most definitely the left-hand path. Proponents of the left-hand path and of the middle path also, which is a very popular path that people like to take, they like to assume and claim that their paths will lead to pleasant places. I don't think the Bible would give any reassurance, sadly perhaps, of those things. But again, people have to choose. I mean, people might think, well, the Bible has no authority, and that's fine. But power is a real thing, and so if there is a focus of power, it can only lie ultimately in one place, you see. This is the philosophical problem. And Satan is a created being. This is the big problem. And therefore, power lies with the Father. All power lies with the Father. So, the left-hand path and the middle path, and people should be careful of the middle path, I think, because, of course, to be lukewarm is no honor to the king. How will the king feel about the servants, those servants of his that pretended not to see him, or nodded acquaintance like some gentleman who lives at the end of the road from time to time, but carried on in their lives, praising equally those who followed very different ideas and never choosing themselves, and always believing that to not choose was wise in their eyes, you see. They would avoid making a fool of themselves and perhaps having to fall out with different sets of friends. I don't know whether that's necessary personally, but it does sometimes happen. Those men and women, I think, will be ashamed when they step before the throne of God. You would be, wouldn't you, really? It would be absolutely impossible, I think, to not blush and lower your eyes and weep. So that's the risk. Of course, you know, if people say, well, it's just all loaded nonsense, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. But there is a choice involved, you see. If you say it's a load of nonsense, then you've made the choice. You can't make a rational argument to say why gender fluidity is wrong. I don't think you can. You might try it, but you see, this is a spiritual matter in essence. It's not a matter of legislation or, you know, principles, really, even. It is spiritual, ultimately. I suppose it's principles on the face of things. You could say, well, there are principles involved, as in all arguments. And the problem is the censure, you see. It's not really the choice of path. Is a separate matter in a way from one's personal conduct. Because one's personal conduct is inadequate. I don't care what you're doing or who you are. So that we have to fix that in our minds, you know, before pressing on any such an idea, any such a path. But it's a choice of path. That's what it is. And then, you know, each path has its consequences, I suppose. The left-hand path offers many, many enticements. I'm pretty sure of that. Whereas the path of the way of the holiness has a more rarefied atmosphere, and its blessings take a little while to perceive, shall we say. It's not a showy, gaudy path. Its waters are deep, and its satisfaction is enduring.